the more people feel welcome to come in and ask questions and not know answers and be curious and challenge, I think that's how the work gets better, especially in a field like this where it is moving faster than law and policy can keep up. So keeping that healthy skepticism, being willing to ask questions, and pressing on people when they don't have good answers, I think is really powerful.
Hello, and welcome to Informatics in the Round, the podcast that's designed so that even my parents can understand the dialogue surrounding biomedical informatics. I'm Kevin Johnson, a physician and informatics researcher at the University of Pennsylvania. Today we were hoping to have Harris Bland, who, as you all know, is my co-host for this, but he was unable to make this episode, and so I'm standing in as best I can, trying to be both informative and funny. Hard to do at the same time. So today's episode, we are discussing two of everyone's favorite topics, mental health and AI. But we needed an expert to walk us through it all, so we decided to invite Dr. Tori Creed. Dr. Creed is an associate professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Perelman School of Medicine and a founder of the Penn Collaborative for Cognitive-Based Therapy and Implementation Science. As an NIH-funded researcher, her work focuses on creating pragmatic and sustainable strategies to increase access to high-quality mental health care, especially in low-resourced communities. She also serves as a senior implementation consultant for Listen.io, which leverages AI to help scale multiple aspects of clinical care. We also welcomed back the wonderful person, Jane Bach. She's an award-winning songwriter who has written for some of the biggest names in music, including Reba McEntire, Tammy Wynette, Colin Ray, and Jody Messina, and others. She is an absolute fantastic person, a great friend, and a perfect addition for this episode. There's a lot to discuss about this episode. I do want to start off by playing a song that is from a person named Nolan Neal, and you'll hear a little bit about him during the episode, and this will kind of set it up a bit. So with that, enough chit chat. Let's get into the song, and then let's get into the episode.
I don't know where to start, but looking in the mirror, I can see who broke my heart. It's more than just insane when all of your tomorrows feel like lonely yesterdays. It's hard to swallow, like a pill laced with sorrow you took anyway. I used to shine so bright that I could blind the sun. I used to feel forgiven for the wrongs that I had done. Lately the light inside my eyes is hard to see, like I'm a shadow of the man I used to be. I used to be. So I step outside, light a half-smoked cigarette, and think about this life and all I've lost. When the whiskey bottle's empty, you can clearly see the cost. It's hard to swallow when there's no more time to borrow, 'cause you blew it all. I used to shine so bright that I could blind the sun. I used to feel forgiven for the wrongs that I had done. Lately the light inside my eyes is hard to see, like I'm a shadow of the man I used to be. I used to be. It ain't over yet, but it sure is hard to breathe when you're drowning in regret, 'cause 'cause there's no one left to leave. 'Cause I used to shine so bright that I could blind the sun, and I was forgiven for the wrongs that I had done. Lately the light inside my eyes is hard to see, like I'm a shadow of the man I used to be. I used to be.
Okay, everybody, I am so excited about this episode. I do want to, I have to start it off with a little bit of a somber note, but before I do that, I want to introduce our guests. Jane, who are you?
I'm Jane Bach. I'm coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee.
Again.
Again.
Exactly. Tori, who are you? Dr. Creed.
Hi, Tori is fine. I'm Tori Creed. I'm an associate professor at University of Pennsylvania, so I am in the Philadelphia suburbs right now.
I'm excited about this episode, although, as I said, part of the genesis of this episode was that one of the guests in the first year of Informatics in the Round podcast was a fantastic singer named Nolan Neal. And I actually met Nolan, of all places, in a bar in Nashville where he was the singer for the evening, and he was amazing. And just for us, no judgment, please. Among the many songs that he did was a song which was called "There's a Penis Between Us," and and so I had that song. I'll send it to you both in Nolan's memory, because as I mentioned, Nolan passed away not too long ago, and it turns out that he passed away having been on The Voice and on America's Got Talent, and having disclosed that he had very significant mental illnesses that contributed to his ultimately dying from a drug overdose. And as I started looking at that or thinking about that, I also noticed that there's just so much literature right now about mental health chatbots. The New York Times has talked about them. And as an evaluator of technology and someone who I know needs to get people like Jane to believe that these technologies are beneficial, I was shocked that they're moving forward so quickly that it's hard for us to provide people with a lot of information. So luckily we have Tori, who has written so much about this and has a few grants, and I have to say some NDAs that we can't discuss, but she'll discuss as much as she's comfortable discussing. So Tori, can you just start us off by telling me, what do you feel about where we are with mental health and technology and what the future is for it?
That is a broad but exciting question.
I'm a broad but exciting person.
I was already getting that feeling. So, you know, as is the answer for so many things, I think I'm going to just start by saying it's complicated. It is not a slam dunk. What I'm not going to say is technology is here to save the day or to solve the crisis around people being able to access mental health care or any of those things. It is so much more complex than that. And to your point, it's a little bit of a Pandora's box. These technologies are here and are available and are being used by people in what you might call like on-label and off-label kinds of ways. So a little bit, I find this moment in time around this intersection of mental health and technology to be complicated and exciting and worrying and have potential and all of these things at once. Fundamentally, there is this issue around access to mental health care. This was an incredibly difficult question to solve before the pandemic, and the pandemic hit and needs exploded, and
Right.
ChatGPT arrived on the scene. And pre-pandemic, when I told people I was doing this work, I was met with such skepticism and doubt. People would say, computers and machines will never be able to provide things like mental health care. What are you talking about?
Yep.
And once ChatGPT arrived, suddenly the responses I get are, "Oh, you're just doing ChatGPT. Everyone does that." I'm like, wait, A, no, not ChatGPT. That's not what I do. And B, it's much more complex than that. So that was a little bit of a vague answer, but I think it has such potential to help, and there's such potential for harm, and there's so much that we don't know, that I think that we are in a moment of possibility, but where we need to be incredibly thoughtful about how we walk forward into that possibility.
Jane, do you see people who are in need of the kind of coaching that psychiatrists, psychologists, or potentially AI can provide in your career?
In my career, I was gonna say something about in my personal life, what you were just talking about. Um, I don't know if my daughter would appreciate my talking about this, but, with my grandson, with her son, he has, uh my daughter is a social worker. She has a master's in social work, and she does work in a therapeutic setting with veterans. She works for the VA. And she said to me, "I think Cameron, that's my grandson, I think he has ADHD. I'm not," she said, "I'm not saying this frivolously. His doctor does want him to be tested for it." And she called me and said, "I can't do the test, mom. The insurance won't cover it. And it's $2,200 to get that test done." She's going to get it done, obviously, but that is upsetting because he needs care. And he's not even going to be able to be diagnosed. And until he's actually diagnosed, we can't do anything through the
That's
school,
amazing.
through anything. So I would love to know what could AI, what could any of that do to help alleviate something like that? To say, "Oh, your child needs to be tested. Let's get him tested so we can get him help." And anyway, I'm sorry I digressed onto that. But as far as my line of work, just about everybody I work with.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Well, I lived in Nashville for a long time, so I believe that that's true.
Yeah, really. I mean, and I don't say everyone I work with is in need of mental health care, although at a cocktail party, I might say it, and I'm saying it, they'll think I'm saying it in jest, but I'm not. Especially being a creative community. Working in a creative community is entirely different than working in a corporate or working in the medical field. And I think we do tend to lose it. I think we do tend, because our writing is part cathartic and part necessary, and I mean therapeutic, and all of that, I find, for me and for everybody I work with. And just constantly reliving traumas through our songs
Yep.
is
Yep.
not necessarily healing. And I know that I would love at times to go back to get some therapy. But I don't know if I want to just do that right now or not, but I've been there and all of my friends have. As far as AI, how is that going to help? How is that going to influence the kind of care that any of us can get?
I think it's a really interesting question, and there are probably as many different answers as there are people who are going to sit down in front of a computer or on their phone and start to search for care, right? Because there's this whole spectrum of what AI can offer, almost in some ways defined by the spectrum of what human beings could offer, but then with some extra pieces, right? Because I think that it would not be unusual for someone like your daughter or someone in your professional world to sit down in front of ChatGPT or any of the other Gemini or any of the other things that are available online and say, how do I know if my son has ADHD? How do I get low cost testing for X? Or to just sit down and say, I'm lonely, talk to me, right? And those are not necessarily what those tools are designed for, and yet those tools will give you a response. So there's this whole spectrum of things that are developed that are just widely publicly available, like ChatGPT, where someone's going to sit down and ask it a question and it will give you a response, which may or may not be a good one, but it's going to say something. And then on the other end of a continuum would be something where it has been designed by people with mental health expertise and computer science expertise, and where it is designed to provide something that, as a human and licensed psychologist, I call an evidence-based treatment for a specified disorder. You're not going to find that from ChatGPT. And then there's maybe like an orthogonal, there's like a whole, I was drawing it like a continuum, like it's one
Yeah.
line, but
Yeah.
there are other things that are like other tools that are designed by mental health providers, but that are supporting a therapist, a human therapist, in doing a good job for you. There's such a continuum of different ways that I think that technology can respond to people, and some are better than others.
So we're going to get to the risks, but I just want to ask a question about the work that you've done because, I have flying anxiety. And I mean, everybody probably has some anxiety in our world right now. I've heard that dogs now are increasing in the rate at which people are prescribing them anti-anxiolytics, probably related to us, but it's just everywhere. And, what's amazing to me is so much of the therapy, for example, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, requires an enormous amount of understanding a disease, understanding humans so that you can ask questions to help expose what are the situations in which they're anxious. For me, I had to actually get on a flight with a therapist and to go through everything that was making me anxious. And that was then the sort of rubric of our entire treatment strategy. So it's interesting that, some of the work that you've done, Tori, is to work not just with the patients, but also with the therapists. Can you say just a little bit about that? Because I found that, Jane, I think you'll agree, this will be the beginning of saying, oh, it could be good. So please.
Absolutely. And Kevin, it sounds like you had excellent exposure therapy under a cognitive behavioral framework. I am always happy when I hear that people are getting good targeted care. So I'm glad that that happened. Cognitive behavioral therapy is the heart and soul of the work that I do. The AI connected pieces are a way that I am trying to accomplish that at
Hmm.
scale.
Hmm.
And that really connects to the core question that you just asked me a second ago, which is like, what is this work that I'm doing that is something different than people necessarily coming directly to an AI driven tool for care? I've done some work in that arena, but the primary work that I've been doing is thinking about how can we use AI to support therapists in doing a really good job. So the AI that is the heart of the work that I've been doing with a number of different partners is not actually client facing. It's not something that if somebody's seeking care for ADHD or anxiety, where that person would go to this tool. Instead, the tools that we've been working on, I have an industry partner with a group called Listen, which is spelled Lyssn, because it's not intuitive if somebody goes looking for it, but that is how it's actually spelled. They are the partner I've worked with most closely around this, where we have developed all of these tools that are intended to help therapists do a better job in their communications, in their therapy work with a person. So in that space, therapy is still defined as two or more human beings having a conversation, and where the AI tools can do a wide range of things. For example, run in the background behind a session so that at the end of the session, if I'm the therapist, I get immediate feedback about how skillful I was in delivering the treatments that we know work, because the science has been, like, clinical trials have run to tell us about exposure therapy for fears of flying, for example. And where the AI might tell me after a session that you and I hypothetically would have had, Kevin, in this example, it would give me feedback within minutes after the session of how skillful I was around CBT, around how skillful I was around more soft skills like empathy and understanding and connection. And then it can aggregate that information over time. So not only do I know how skillful I was in my session with you today, but I can look at a pattern over time about how skillful I've been in our work together or across my clients, where my strong points are and my areas for growth. Take that up a couple of levels. Supervisors can see how their teams are doing. Organizations can see how skillfully their clinicians are working as a group and where they might want to target training. I'll take it up one more level, which is that payers could think about where really good care is happening and pay more for really good care to reimburse people, organizations that are doing good clinical care. There are other things in that space around training therapists that we're also doing, but I'm going to pause because I don't want to talk too much here. But like that gives a sense of this other area where AI can point is toward helping therapists and systems.
I never thought of that. That's very interesting. My thing with all everything you're talking about between therapist and I don't know if you call them clients or patients. Um if I what my lack of trust comes in with that is if I were to access something myself. If it were available for me to access myself, "Ooh, I'm gonna go to this AI-driven link or whatever, and I'm gonna put in my concerns, I'm gonna put in what I'm feeling, and it's gonna tell me what I need to do, and I'm gonna be fine tomorrow." And obviously, I I always feel like when it comes to anything computer, it's missing that one element, the unexpected human element that in anything, it just can't do that. I know that the humans program it, and I don't understand AI totally, but I can grasp it, but I don't understand it. It would make me feel better if the way you were using it is the way it was being used. If it was being used between the doctor, the therapist, and the AI system, whatever that is, and then you can take that and use it to help me, then I think that's wonderful, and if that's how it's intended to, work, then I'm all for it.
Tori, I'm curious, do most therapists that you've had a chance to chat with value this role of AI? Are they concerned at all about the feedback? I know from the work that I'm doing, we're getting sort of polarizing information. One group of clinicians who are saying, I really don't want to ever see myself or have an evaluation about my empathy or my engagement or my dominance. I don't want to see it. And we have another group who say, please give me that information because I believe the way I get better is to look in a mirror. So, how did the therapist feel about it?
It's a great question. And yes, I run into people who land in each of those camps as well, and lots of things in between. But what I hear you naming there, Kevin, might be less about AI and might be more about having my performance or my skill as a therapist evaluated and giving me feedback, almost
Totally.
regardless of what the source is.
Right.
And part of how I came to this work is that prior to having these tools, 10 years ago, one of the things that my center really focuses on, one of the keystones of the center I lead, is working in low resource settings to train therapists to do excellent clinical care, like evidence based treatment. And a part of any of us learning any complex skill is getting feedback about whether we're doing it skillfully. If I were learning to play the piano that's behind Jane, or if I were learning to do surgery, or I were learning to do anything else, but I never get feedback about whether I'm doing it well, I might think I'm doing a good job, but I don't know. The way you really learn is to have a piano teacher next to you giving you feedback, or another doctor standing next to you as you're a resident and learning how to do surgery. And that's also true in providing high quality mental health care. And prior to AI, the only way we could do that was I have a team of experts, CBT experts, who work with me, who would listen to a recording of a therapy session. It takes an hour to listen, 2 hours to provide scores and written feedback, send it back. Might be a week and a half before a therapist could get any of that feedback. Now with AI, it comes to people very quickly, but which is important about being able to get regular feedback to learn whether you're leveling up your skill. But that fundamental thing, Kevin, that you named about the discomfort of getting feedback about how skillfully you're doing something, that's just a really human reaction. And so for people who are eager and hungry to learn, we have sort of a green light and can move forward pretty easily with implementing these kinds of tools. For people who feel more reluctant, I find that it's really helpful to connect back to the values of what brought them into this field that really on average, people who are mental health care providers are here because they care about other people and want to help them live the lives they want to live. And that these kinds of tools are something that I, as a therapist, can have in my back pocket as one source of information about whether I am meeting that goal that brought me into the field. I also want to ask my clients about whether I'm meeting that target and being helpful for them specifically. There are other sources of info, but where there is resistance, sometimes if I can align this with people's values, that can be helpful around getting people engaged and open to it.
I have to say, and I guess I am about to slip a little bit into the more negative space here, but maybe it's worth getting into that a little bit. So I have to say that the thing that I'm hearing you say that I'm also constantly fighting in my work, which is how to reimagine primary care, how to deal with some of the health issues many people have where AI technologies could be predictive or improve communication, is that slippery slope from there's a group of people who benefit to it's a mandated practice because it's so good. And I know when people talk about AI at the client facing side, there is clearly a group of people who benefit. So, Jane, you may not like it, but it turns out that adolescents in general have been studied back into the 70s, and they often prefer speaking with technology more than people. So, we as we get older may view that as, not ideal. But at a certain point, because this new technology is so easy, and I could see how the work that Tori that you're doing is at its absolute infancy now, that it will be very little time before you are absolutely able to show that AI outperforms therapists and or outperforms other coaching methodologies for specific populations of therapists, and that the next thing is someone's going to want to add that to credentialing, and the next thing is all therapists will actually have to do it or risk either losing jobs or losing money. Is that like a possible outcome of this work? And if so, is there something you're doing to think about that early?
Is that a possible outcome? Sure, because everything in the world probably is some version of a possible outcome. And also, ethically, fundamentally, I think that people should always have choice. And across the board, and here's a great example of where that's really true, right? There is no one size fits all for anyone, probably in most things, but particularly in mental health care, right? Each individual person has their own needs and their own preferences in the same way that I might be a good fit as a therapist for one person, and someone else might come spend a session with me and be like, no, thank you, that she is not it for me. And that would be a really valid reaction for them to have. And that's also going to happen with different AI tools. And I think that ethically, we need to maintain space for people to be able to make choice about their treatment decisions. Um, and so that's, I think, that comes to like policy decision, that comes to things like large payers and what they will pay for. It is hard for me to imagine that there will ever be a world in which having human connection will not be important for a large group of people.
I sure hope so.
I would hope so. My God,
And it
I would
depends
hope
on
so.
what someone's looking for out of therapy, right? Like if I am looking for a treatment interaction that's an ADHD diagnosis, the human thing may not be the front and center. That will still vary person by person. If I am looking to like find happiness in my life or find connection, and that's what I'm
Hmm.
seeking,
Hmm.
and what I find it with is a chatbot, I may have an existential crisis at some point when I realize my closest relationship is not with a person, right? I think some of it will still come down to what people are seeking and what they're comfortable with.
But that's what I was talking about with there's always a human element. I just experienced it the other day. I can't believe we're even talking about this. It's so weird. In the recording studio, I am working on a project. I'm co-producing a project, and the guy that I'm co-producing with, I work with him a lot. He's also an engineer, so he engineers the project as well. And we were standing there. We were having some overdubbing done, and I was watching what was happening, on the graph on the screen for that track. And I said to him, well, stop now because I want to change that right there, measure 37, let's yada, yada, yada. And when he changed what I wanted, what went before it changed in front of my eyes. And I said, wait, that's not the way I wrote it, and that's not the way I want it to go. He
Really?
said, well, where he said, "Oh, I have this new predictive software, something, I don't know."
Yeah, yeah.
He said, "I am just experiencing it truthfully." He said, "The last couple of days, they must have just updated it or something." He said, "And it's not fun." He said, "There are most of the time, man, it just is right on." That's what I would have done, because I made that change in section B. Would I have to change section A? Sometimes, yes. Sometimes you deliberately go out of the key, you know what I mean? You go to a chord that's unexpected. That doesn't mean I'm suddenly changing keys midstream, but
Yeah.
that's the first time I've experienced it, and it was blowing him away because as we were working, he would go, "Look, it did it again, it did it again." It was
So what
just
did you have to do? Did you have to reject all of his changes as a part of the process?
well, it was only that one. That when everything else, they weren't major changes, they weren't anything that affected anything that really affected the whole tone of the phrase, the musical phrase, and so we changed it. But yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I was like, I don't know, I know people that are playing around with AI to write lyrics, and I don't like that. I don't it's not approve. Who am I? I don't understand it. We're in a creative field. Why would you not want to be creative? Why would you want to rely on AI? But
But I think mental health, Tori, please talk about this, but I think mental health is so similar in some ways to creative fields. I think, physiologically, a lot of the same pathways are at play. And I would imagine that if you go at the level of the therapist, is it the case that the therapist kind of has to understand the personality of their client and that some of what these tools may do is to help predict attributes of the client? I mean, like, that's what I'm imagining, Tori. Am I close?
Absolutely. Jane, what you described makes me think about a couple of things around like how autonomous the AI system is
Hmm.
essentially, right? Like we can have something that's running in the background in a therapy session that's making suggestions to me as a therapist, but where I, as the therapist, can see it, it might suggest something I hadn't thought of, but where I then can make a decision and in the moment in a way that is intended to be responsive to you and how I understand you as a human being. So that, and I think that having transparency, I think ethically, a thing that's going to be really important is transparency in the extent to which AI exists in any interaction, in any space with human beings, right? And because if you were my client, I would want you to know, for example, that I had some AI based tools that were giving me like little tickles or little
Hmm.
nudges or whatever they were to make suggestions. And that I was then making the decisions ultimately as the therapist. But I would want you as the client to know that that was present in what we were doing. The transparency matters to me. One way to think about this is that the human being can still then make the decision. There are going to be people who are going to interact with a chatbot where there isn't a human being mediating the
right.
space between the
Right.
tool and the client. But I think as this work moves forward, transparency about where any of these tools might be and how autonomous they are or aren't is important for people to be able to make choice about what they're engaging with.
See, now what you're saying makes me think that what the update or new software that he's using, whatever it is, in the recording of the music process is the same thing. What it's doing is
Totally agree.
saying, "See, I didn't look at it that way." I thank you because now that you look at it that way, that really is helpful. I mean, it immediately I said, "No, no, no, that's not what I want to do. That's my choice."
Well, I disagree with you here. I have to say this because what's really fascinating about these 2 points is I'm realizing that depersonalization, which is something that can happen when you have trained on millions and millions of societally normative activities, including songwriting or therapy, can happen if you pay attention to AI in the same way that over personalization in the wrong direction can happen. Meaning, if Tori is familiar with a cultural nuance in my life, and maybe I don't really want therapy that's based on unwoke Americans. I want something that's very much based on people who get Kevin is this kid who came from Baltimore. So let's use seafood references or crab references or Baltimore Orioles references. You would think AI could do that well, and it probably will, but only after it learns me, not after it treats me like an entire community. So, Tori, your point about a therapist getting highly personalized, targeted tickles from the AI, but having their own set of highly personalized, targeted thoughts is really fascinating. And it's exactly the same, Jane. I think, one of the things I love about music, and Jane knows, and Tori, you don't know, I try to be in the music space, but I am not Jane Bach. Um,
And he's totally welcome.
Thank you, thank you. But one of the things that I think is a phenomenon here is the music I like is the music that does the unexpected things. And the music that I keep listening to is not the music that follows the same chord it's not a hymn. It's something other than a hymn. And I notice as soon as people send me music and it sounds like a hymn, I don't like it. I know exactly what chords are happening after the first note. Like I know exactly how it's going to play. I know where the bridge is going to be. I know how many times we're going to hear the chorus. So I could easily see AI saying, "Oh no, 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 your chorus is in the wrong place," or "Oh no, 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 that's a divergent chord. That's not what people do." And you saying, and that's why they're not professionals who make money. So both of you, I think, have the same potential fear. And the question is, how do we bake that into AI so that as you're delivering this therapy or as you're relying on a tool that could really help with cohesion, you also acknowledge and not have to turn it into clicks that you have to constantly manage for every single recommendation that it may be giving a therapist or a songwriter that are not the direction you want to go. Has that come up in your work, in your assessments of the tools?
Yes, and I have a couple of colleagues and I are literally writing a paper right now that's under review that's thinking about these questions about how autonomous the system is, going from something where it's like a decision tree of treatment that's been written by a human being and where a client would just sort of goes through the process versus completely autonomous AI as therapist, and then what is in the middle around. That's kind of like the things that I was just talking about, that are how strong is the recommendation from the AI for the therapist, and how does the therapist make decisions
Hmm.
about whether to listen to the AI or not. Like Jane, and what you described, it almost sounded like the AI is more a little more autonomous than the middle point, because it sounded like you and your partner made a change and the AI implemented other changes into the music versus suggesting and saying something like,
Oh, it implemented it. It appeared. It appeared. Now we could just change it, which we did. Nothing's carved in stone, of course. But this is just blowing my mind that it's just so interesting. It really and truly is. To me, AI always seemed like a movie thing, like something from science fiction, not anything I would use in my everyday life. And of course, I'm learning now that that's not the case. And again, a lot of it is a little scary. A lot of it is a little scary. My concern with, and this is a concern I know I've expressed to Kevin, is, and I said it to my daughter a couple of years ago when she wanted to get him tested. I said, if you get him tested, he's going to be labeled in the school. Don't let I told her, I said, "Don't let the school know that you're getting tested. I'm sorry, otherwise he's gonna be labeled." And she said, "Well, it's not a matter of labeling, mom. If he is dealing with this, they need to know so that they can effectively educate him."
Right.
She said, "So that they can approach him." Right now, they're approaching him like he's a problem child, and he's not a problem child. He's a child that has something, I don't know if you call it physiological or whatever it is, going on that he needs help with. Anyway, yeah, it's just, but I think AI is something that we do need to embrace because it's here. And we can figure out a way to coexist with it.
I know Tori has thought about the issues of ethics and data privacy and biases. So, what do you think about what she just said, both in terms of the work you're doing for therapists, but also what you're seeing happening in the community? How do we help families to recognize the sort of double-edged sword that AI can produce? Meaning, if I could do early diagnosis of ADHD, I can provide a more structured environment for a child. Um, if I do early diagnosis of ADHD, and I have to tell you a story, both because the listeners will like this. So I'm going to same question, but I'm just getting flooded in my own head with my past. So in Baltimore, Maryland, there was a folder that principals kept, I guess guidance counselors kept it, and they could add whatever they wanted to add about children to, I'm going to laugh when I tell you this story, but they could add whatever they wanted to add to this folder, and it followed you all the way through till 12th grade. And then at 12th grade, you could see your folder.
Oh my God.
So let me just tell you my story because this is going to be so perfect for this. So somewhere in second grade, one of my teachers added a picture. And I was a kid who loved animals. I bred frogs and I did all that kind of stuff at the house all the time. I was the kid who brought, the caterpillars in, got their food, watched them turn to a chrysalis, let them go. Fast forward to 12th grade. I get this folder. And in addition to like some of my favorite art and poems and things that I wrote all through school, there was a picture of what looked like to the teacher a sperm. And she wrote on the piece of paper, very concerned about Kevin over sexualizing at this young age. So I'm in 12th grade looking at this. I didn't see a sperm. I saw a tadpole, right? And so I'm looking at this thinking, oh my God, for 10 years, teachers are figuring out their class and they're flipping through and they see the kid who drew the sperm. And it's like affecting all these things that I don't remember, but I am sure there was a teacher who's like, he got a little sex deviant. We got to put him in the front of the class so that, he's not back there looking at butts or whatever sex deviants do. And and so, I was totally believing that I was stigmatized. So you can imagine that if I was a parent who didn't understand this, and you said to me, there's these really wonderful tools we can use to do early prediction, um, that I'd be channeling my tadpole story and thinking, I don't want my child to be a part of that. I want these teachers to make their own decisions. So does this all, Tori is nodding ferociously. So what are you thinking?
But what am I thinking? So many things. Kevin,
Let me
listen,
let me
what you
assure
said
you.
later.
Let me assure you that I really do like tadpoles.
So I hear. I am delighted by your story. We will unpack it later.
Oh no.
Um,
This is going to be
in
many lunch
terms,
meetings. I feel lots of lunch meeting. Come on now.
yes, indeed, I am ready for that. But like, actually, like very much to your point, it feels to me like, yes, AI could also make that mistake, but boy, human beings are not free of bias,
Right.
right? Like this is a little bit of a false dichotomy of like,
Totally
what
agree.
if AI labels my kid in a or me, or, a person in a problematic way? Because you just give such a great example of human beings make problematic decisions and assumptions and carry biases all the time. And P.S. Kevin, I know you know this. Those get encoded into AI because AI is based on data that comes often from human beings, and so human bias shows up in AI as well. So all of those things could happen. It's very true. And because human beings can also have bias, it doesn't feel to me like should we lean on human intuition because humans are so unbiased,
Yeah.
non-judgmental,
Yeah.
and absolutely rational and logical? Not the ones I know. Right? AI is a tool that will have those same fundamental problems in it, and neither one of these solutions are free of it. And so some of it is being really aware that bias is baked into humans, that bias is baked into AI, and being really proactive in trying to identify and measure where that exists and try to take active steps to counterbalance it rather than imagining a world that's free of it in either way.
That's beautifully stated.
Really, absolutely. And Kevin, would my fear of having him labeled and have that following him on his medical information? Would that impact your informatics? Would that have something to do with his medical records because he has a doctor, he sees a pediatrician?
So number one, the answer. Okay, obviously truth. I mean, the audience knows this. Tori, you may not. I'm a pediatrician also, um, and in full disclosure, my daughter has ADHD. I'll explain to her that I talked about that later. Um, I think the answer is I would want it to, because there are many things about children who have, for example, ADHD. There are comorbidities. A really simple example is some of the medications that we give kids for ADHD cause tics, or sometimes even Tourette's-like syndromes, which is when they cuss. There's dirty mouth or coprophilia, right? And so I'd like to have an explanation given to my teachers. When some of my early work in medication management, we found that there were children talking about, Tori, your point about biases of people is so important. Parents would bring their children to school. The children would come in and be very sleepy in class. This actually was one particular story that were told by one of the school nurses. And the teachers all made assumptions about the family. Maybe they're homeless, maybe they're, whatever. So the school nurse called the mother, who said, oh, I gave him Benadryl before school because he was congested. And that's what caused it. So there's a certain amount of knowing information that actually can debias as much as other information can bias. So I would always say disclose, and then expect that people are kind and gracious and courteous. And if there's something that they are seeing that they think suggests that the ADHD is in some way getting in the way, then parents need to make the decision about whether this is a stigmatizing person or an objective person looking at data and making a decision. And again, Tori nodding, so please.
Well, and Jane, you said that there are some people in his world at school who are labeling him as like problematic or a behavior problem or right. And so one of the powerful things about having a diagnosis label is it reframes for people
Hmm.
what they are seeing, that this is not like a kid who is problematic or any this is a kid who has a diagnosis of ADHD. The way I talk to kids about diagnoses sometimes is this thing you have going on happens so often that there's a name for it because we see it so often in the world. And the good news is that now that we know that there's a name for it, we can figure out what about this is things where you might want some extra supports. What about this might be part of your superpower, right? Because not everything about a diagnosis is necessarily negative.
Right.
And it gives us a different way of understanding what we are seeing. For any of us who have a diagnosis of anything, a diagnosis is really just you have a cluster of things going on with you that come together so often that we've given it a name. And once it has a name, because so many people have it, there are people who have focused on learning how to help folks with that same cluster of stuff or a similar cluster of stuff to what you have. So there's all this science that's gone into ways to make your life easier or ways to make it easier for you to get closer to your goals based on other people who have the same kinds of things going on that you do. And
I
here's what
love
we've
that.
learned from that. And how do we fit it to you? And that's that thing of balancing data and science and tailoring to a specific human. We draw what we know about the science and then we share it with a specific person or family and figure out how we need to tweak what we know aggregated works to make it fit for you and your situation, your strengths and your preferences.
So, Tori, how do you feel about AI-based tools that might diagnose mental health such that parents could bring to us that story? My child did the equivalent of the Vanderbilt form, and it looks to me like my child may have ADHD. The teachers are all saying behavioral problems. Are you hoping that that evolves and that that becomes commonplace? Or are you fearful that that evolves and becomes commonplace? I mean, which way do you feel?
I don't feel fearful about that at all. In fact, that feels to me like something where we already have good evaluations of many of the disorders that exist based on like strong psychometrically rigorous measures, right? That was like so jargony. So what I mean by that
And
for
and you know
anybody
me,
who's not
Don't worry, I was about to do it because Jane knows I always unpack acronyms and jargon. So please, thank you for
Totally.
self-correcting.
Totally. What we have is a bunch of tools that people have created and fine-tuned over time to make sure that they're pretty good measuring sticks of very specific things. So we can do a pretty good job separate from AI, measuring symptoms or experiences people are having and naming what they are as a diagnosis. AI can help us with that. They can help it make it faster. They can help give people easier access.
That's
Somebody
the
who
key.
lives
That's
somewhere where they're rural and they can't get to a specialty center but can get online and do it. For me, that's an excellent use of AI because we have good measuring sticks for different disorders. And if somebody can just get access to that measuring stick from wherever they are and bring that as one source of information to talk to a doctor about, and add it to other sources of information like observing the kid and talking to the kid and hearing from the teacher and from the parents and grandparents, and right, we sort of triangulate into a really good assessment. So I like it.
Oh, so Jane, um, so your daughter, right, calls and says, "Well, we know what the diagnosis is. We found a tool out online. We downloaded the app. We answered some questions, and it says although it can't give a diagnosis, it is suggesting that we talk to our doctor about our son having ADHD." Would you say, excellent, do that, or would you say, stay away, I don't trust this technology?
Oh, no, I would say excellent, do that. I mean, I may have trust issues, I'm not an idiot. So, I mean
Okay,
There's
so
an
you get the
episode
you
title right there.
I'm gonna have to, well, I'll have to let Ellie know that. You get the continuum, Tori. There's idiot and there's trust issues. They're not the same.
Got it. Got it. Although I'll tell you, if I can actually throw like a cautionary piece into what I'm saying here, it always, for me, it depends on what the data are that this was trained on, right? It isn't that I think that any app that somebody would download would be something that I would trust. Fundamentally, in all of these technologies, my question is, what are the data this was trained on? If this is a tool that's diagnosing things and it's trained on data where experts know how to measure whatever this thing is, and the data has expert feedback that's trained the tool, love it. If instead this is the equivalent of like in like magazines, you used to be able to flip through it and take here are 10 questions to
Yes.
decide whether your marriage is in trouble or whatever, right? Like you could also find a tool like that online to air quote diagnose all kinds of things, but like that's based on fluff at best. That's my nice word for what those are trained on. And so really my question is this based on good clinical scientific data? And if so, I would trust it and be glad that people had access to it.
That's what I meant a half an hour ago but somebody has to input the information into the AI system, and that's, of course, that's where my lack of trust comes in. So I would need to that's actually what I would need to know in order to trust the information.
So Tori, talking about the data and biases, and I know that you're working with companies, so I'm going to ask a question that maybe fits into that, maybe not. One of the things that you do by understanding the feedback of therapy sessions, by collecting and critiquing, is theoretically you could be creating the world's most massive data set of therapy conversations for any particular mental health disorder. Those data could then be used to train models that could be given to people outside of a healthcare system who might have poor access. A, have you thought about it? B, recognizing that there may be biases because this is such a complicated human-human interaction, do you believe that we could build tools like that?
So A, have I thought about it? And B, do I believe we could build tools to do that? So A, yes, have thought about it. B, I promise I'm going to expand on that. B, is that where we're headed? I'm going to say it is very likely that that's where the large we are headed. I think it is impossible to imagine that the field is not going to go that way, because you're right. These systems are gathering data as they go, and you get larger and larger data sets that can do all kinds of things. What's potentially missing in what you've described so far, though, is still having human beings that are experts that are rating whether anything that's happening in those sessions is any good. Whether that's like fidelity measurement, fidelity to the like CBT being delivered as it was designed to be delivered, as it's delivered in clinical trials and all, right? You could have really high quality therapy that's happening in those sessions, which is then great to train an algorithm on. Or you could have kind of garbagey therapy, or you could have
Right.
actively harmful things
But you're giving
that are
feedback.
happening in session.
So theoretically, your data, and what I love about your data is that you are linking an outcome to it. At least one, possibly two, right? The one outcome is this is therapy that's being critiqued by AI systems. And if it's critiqued as highly valuable, theoretically, that would be data you might want to include in a training system. And if it was critiqued as garbage, theoretically, that would be something you might reject, assuming that there's some predictive validity to the AI critique. And I think most listeners understand that, but I'll say those last couple of words. Assuming that if you say it's garbage, that is reflected in, say, what the patient heard, which was they didn't like it, or their satisfaction scores, or maybe even what actually happens to the patient at the other end. So patients who receive bad critique have a higher rate of relapse, for example, or can't quite internalize the therapy frameworks that are being taught. So, do you think that's enough? Like, if your system became nationally, internationally visible, and you could get a database of here is a way something was taught in response to an input that was received by a client, and this was all rated as on a scale from 1 to 10, where 10 is the best possible, it's all rated as a 10. Therefore, we're going to take all of that and we're going to create a model and we're going to create an app that gets out to Jane and others to use. Thoughts? Am I crazy?
Not, no, you're not crazy.
I'm sorry.
I
Am I
think
being an idiot or am I being no, I'm just kidding.
where on that continuum are you? Excellent. Got it. Got it. I think so. And in fact, what you just described, we're not there yet. One of the studies, I have a federally funded study with some partners, those same partners I was naming before, right now, where we are actually at an earlier stage of what you just described. And I'm not sure that that's the end state we're aiming for, but right now, what we are doing in this study is we are implementing the tools that I was describing that give therapists feedback about the quality of their therapy. We're doing that in the Philadelphia community mental health system.
Oh
So,
wow.
an under-resourced public mental health system. We have 5 clinics here in the city who are using these tools. And what we are studying is, first of all, just some basic feasibility stuff. Like, can these tools actually work in the very real complex world of a public mental health system?
Wow.
In Philadelphia, among the top 10 largest cities, is the lowest income city in the United States of the 10 largest cities. So our public mental health system is so important and has lots of challenges. So first of all, we're making sure, can these tools even work in this kind of a place? Spoiler alert, yep. And then non-technical words, yes.
Yes.
Um, and then the rest of the study is, when therapists get these tools, what kind of outcomes do we see? Do their CBT scores elevate? Do clients experience gains related to anxiety and depression? Do clients stay in therapy longer or drop out of therapy sooner? Right, because we're trying to sort of see what the data tell us about this idea, this hypothesis, that getting this kind of feedback helps therapists level up their game, which leads to clients getting better and finishing treatment instead of dropping out. That's sort of the hypothesis. That's what we're hoping we'll see in the study. And what that could give us data for is what you just described, Kevin, is then we would have a data set that is, here are the elements that happened in the therapies where clients got better or stayed in therapy longer or other things. And so we could at some point, I think, pick those pieces out and build algorithms to do what you said. And there will still always be people who want to talk to a person. So that would exist as a tool, but I really think that choice is important. And some people will want that, and that will help with access to care because like lots of people could access that, and there will still be people who don't want it or need something more specific or different or just don't like technology or other things.
Well, Jane was really looking pretty happy about that answer.
No, I just have been making notes. Anytime I have a conversation and I hear something that sparks something in me, I write it down. So it was the idea of, at least the way I interpreted it was, I don't want to talk to a human being. I'd rather, have something, would compute the answer for me and give it to me. I don't want to have to deal. At least that's the way my brain took it. With a person, I mean, there are times when I don't want to talk to somebody, but I want answers, and so I just thought that was interesting. Ignore me.
This is what happens when you're watching the creative process happening.
Well, with the gold records behind her, it is very compelling to watch this creative process happen.
Yes,
So.
yes. So Jane, as we're getting ready to close, I always want to ask
Oh, I
questions.
hate when that
I
happens.
know, I know, I know. Um, what's the question you were hoping we would address that we should address before we close?
Well, I think of AI in terms of doing human work. I don't know if that makes any sense, but where humans would need to compute something, take their life experiences, their education, whatever it is, and come to a conclusion. AI to me seems like it's going to give that conclusion. It's going to figure out what that conclusion is before you can even figure out what your own conclusion is. And I think of it in terms of my business as a creative person. I think of it in terms as, taking over what humans should be doing. I never really thought about it in terms of what Tori was taught. That was just so. I have to thank you because this has been one of the most enlightening conversations that I've had in a long time. It's really been wonderfully informative and so interesting. You answered a lot of questions for me, and you also curried up a lot of questions that I now have that it would take way too long to even get into. But I'm going to be doing a lot of research and which I love. After these podcasts, that's what I do, and I love it. It just anyway. Did you answer any of my questions about AI? Actually, yes, you did.
Well, I have one that you didn't ask, but I think you're going to ask. And Tori, this is something I'm wrestling with as well. This is such a hot area. Again, the commercial applications are getting ahead of our ability to recommend or study them. So people are just adopting things. How do we help the public, especially in an area as sensitive as the one that you're in? How do we keep the public involved with this? Should it be more podcasts about it? I mean, how have you thought about communicating sort of as a scientist out to a public that's generally speaking not idiots, but are skeptical? And how do we help them?
It's a great question because skepticism is really merited here. I think healthy skepticism is the right approach. And the more information we have, the more informed we can be in asking really targeted questions to figure out what's right for us. But you're right. Boy, this technology is moving so much faster than things like law and policy can move. And it's really complicated when you think about even sort of like the mission and ethics in science versus in industry and for-profit companies. And so those are driven by different motivations. And I'm not trying to frame either one as like the good guy or bad guy in that story. Just they are different things. It's one of the reasons I like collaborations across those groups. I think you get the best of both worlds. I think that people leaning into having questions and wanting to know more can be incredibly helpful. And I think that leaning on people who are the scientists or the researchers or the tech startup co-founders, leaning on them on their responsibility to communicate in everyday language with the public so that the public can know and so that this work is demystified is incredibly important. I think it's so easy today in a million ways to feel overwhelmed by things happening in the world writ large. And that's true in the face of technology as well. And so the more people feel welcome to come in and ask questions and not know answers and be curious and challenge, I think that's how the work gets better, especially in a field like this where it is moving faster than law and policy can keep up. So keeping that healthy skepticism, being willing to ask questions, and pressing on people when they don't have good answers, I think is really powerful.
Well said.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't have said it better. And therefore, I will make sure that we include that as an early part of the podcast. So, my final point, I guess, going back to Nolan, I am going to put one of Nolan's songs somewhere in, and it will not be the one that I told you the title of at the very beginning. Although personally, I am sending you that one because it's actually really
You have
good.
to send it. I mean,
It's
Yes,
great.
please.
It's just great.
it's very Nashville.
It is
Actually.
totally Nashville.
Really.
So Jane has done a lot. So the last time I talked with you, Jane, you were working on the Lullaby album.
Yes, and I'm still in the I just have 2 more songs to actually record. And plans are, a YouTube channel, of course, for it, because there are many lullaby channels, but they're music, totally music instrumentals. These are actually songs, and a lot of these songs are not just for babies. A lot of them, I've had people say, "Oh my God, I would listen to that while I was falling asleep."
Uh-oh.
It was just so, and they're songs. They all have meaningful lyrics. That's just the name of my game. So, they all have meaningful lyrics, and I'm excited about it. I'm just finishing up a project with an artist out of LA, and we're going in today. Actually, I have to be at the studio in 45 minutes, which
Oh,
is not, oh no, it's right in Green Hills.
okay.
And I finishing up that project, and then it's going to be ready for mixing and mastering. And I will tell you, because I'm just so excited about this. I'm born and raised in New York, and
By
been
the way,
here.
nobody can ever tell when they hear you Southern.
Yes, I know my accent, but I thought I had a Southern accent. Let me tell you, after all these years here, I thought I had a Southern
No,
accent, but
mm-mm,
apparently I don't.
don't.
But anyway, I just came back from New York because, unbeknownst to me, I was informed in June. I did know this was going to happen. I was inducted into the New York State Country Music Hall of Fame.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I need we
Amazing.
need like an audience track. Like a lot of applause right about now. But we'll at least do this. Wow. You are the
Yeah,
first
it was.
person I've ever met who is in the New York Academy Hall of Fame, Country Music Hall of Fame.
Wow.
It was quite a shock, and it was such an honor for your home state to, acknowledge what you've accomplished, because basically you really, it comes and it goes. You have a hit, and that's great. Everybody's your best friend. And then you go back to the actual work involved. And, hopefully you have some more success and everybody's your best friend again. And then, it's just that kind of a situation. But it's wonderful. And I am, again, very honored. I'm
Well,
thrilled.
congratulations. That is incredibly well deserved.
Also makes me feel very old and very tired.
Well, I won't make the microaggression I was about to make. But let's
Oh,
just say
no,
I
no,
had one.
no.
I stopped myself. I'm getting
No,
better.
I'm teasing
I know.
anyway.
No, no, no. So, do you have a song that you would like us to play that you think really
Oh,
speaks to
you
the
are you
issues
know
of?
what? I did not prepare for that. I really didn't. I have some wonderful new songs, but
Well, just send me an
apparently.
MP3 and we'll
Oh, I
add it. We'll add
will.
it to the end.
I just played the Bluebird Friday night,
Oh, Tori, have you
and
heard of the Bluebird?
No.
it's
Bluebird Cafe, which by the way is so famous, it has a whole show about it called Nashville. So if you've seen the series,
Oh, yes.
that's the place where all songwriters. In fact, it's the most amazing place, and people on this have already heard us talk about it. The name of this podcast, Informatics in the Round, is based on the Bluebird Cafe and the model of singing in the round. Songwriters like
songwriters in the
Jane.
round.
Explain the in the round, Jane.
Well, what it is there are 4 of us, and generally we do it in the round, two facing, two facing. Depending upon the instrumentalization or whatever, we sometimes do it on the stage in what we call the row. It's just a straight across. But in the round, I love doing it. And what we do is, as the host of the round, I'll start it off and all original songs. You can't do any cover songs. And so I'll play something and I'll tell a very quick story about behind the song. Now, generally speaking, the audience likes to hear songs that they know. And because when you're listening to someone playing the guitar and it's been a song that's been a hit, you're actually hearing the production in your head. Even though I had a big hit with Reba, even though I don't sing like Reba, I don't sound like Reba. Wish I sung like Reba, but I'm playing the song from the writer's perspective, which is not her perspective, and so they're hearing it differently. And everyone has their own style of doing things, and they find it's interesting. The stories are always interesting, and then it goes to the next person and they do a song, and it goes around like that. uh, the rounds last anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours, so you can get 4 to 5 songs a piece in, and it's just wonderful. It's fun. I love doing it. I'm not I never aspired to be an artist. I'm just a writer. So it's fun. They call me a performing songwriter, and I just really enjoy doing it.
They don't call you a singer-songwriter?
I no, I would never let someone call me well, they do. They say, "Oh, she's a singer-songwriter." I'm not a singer-songwriter. I mean, give me a name. Carrie Underwood's a singer-songwriter. She is a great singer and she's a writer, but for me, Carly Simon is a singer-songwriter. I'm just a songwriter. Other people do my songs. I don't. So unless I'm in the round, then
Yes. Well, that's the whole idea of in the round, and that's, by the way, what we just did, because
that
we sort of
is.
batted around. That's why I do this. The point I was going to make with all this, and then I know we have to go. I'm sure I'm getting yelled at for being so long. Um, Tori, where is Taylor Swift from?
Oh, she's a local girl here.
We consider her a Nashville
This
girl,
is
but
the
she's
point.
really not.
This is the point. I'm in
Yes.
Nashville, and they say Nashville's own Taylor Swift. I moved to
Right. Yeah.
Philadelphia, and they say Pennsylvania's own Taylor
Pennsylvania's own Taylor
Swift.
Swift. Yeah, she was born in Pennsylvania. She lived there until she was 7 or 8 years old.
Right.
So,
So this is
uh,
why the reason why New York State is claiming you is because you're like, Taylor Swift is like you.
well, right. No, no. I actually didn't leave New York. We did move to the suburbs, but I was almost 17 already, ready almost to go off to college. So,
So do you consider yourself New York's own Jane Bach
oh
or
yeah,
Nashville's own Jane Bach?
I don't know. Either, both. I'm always a New Yorker. I'll be a New Yorker till the end. But there are times when I feel like I'm a Nashvilleian. There are still times when they remind me I'm a Yankee. So,
Got it. So hot chicken or bagels?
Nashville Deli.
That's cheating.
They are so-
Tori, that's like the top deli. I shouldn't be saying that, but it is one of the top delis in Nashville, which is called Noshville because it's nosh. It's a play on the word noshing, and it's bagels from a group that I don't think they're from New York. I think Proper Bagel
Well,
is
the
from New
the
York.
owner, the original owners were. They came down and they wanted to open up a New York Jewish style deli. That's what they wanted because we didn't have anything like that. And very welcomed, and it's done very well. And you can get a great deli sandwich and just all kinds of the same types of food you would get at a New York deli. Just
It's
really
it's like the
wonderful.
AI of New York bagels.
Well, there you go.
I'm going to be in Nashville in 3 weeks and I'm making
No,
mental notes of all of
you
the
need my
places.
phone number. You need to get in
Seriously,
touch
you two
with
should
me. No,
meet. Straight, she
That
seriously.
would
is an
be fun.
amazing, fun. What you're seeing on the screen and what you're here is like the tip of the iceberg of Jane. She's pretty amazing.
Amazing.
Thanks for listening to this episode. It was really, really interesting for me to hear it, and I think just listening to the way Jane responded to so much of what Tori said, it's actually pretty clear that Tori's work and Tori's vision for the way in which we could be using mental health AI, both to train therapists, but also eventually to help us to improve the access of AI based therapy or improve the access of therapy in general, is really going to be transformative. So I'm very excited about that direction and really excited we got to hear about it here. Anyway, thanks for listening to this episode. To hear about new releases, find us on social media at Info in the Round on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. We are also on X, but are also newly on Blue Sky if you want to check us out there. And if you have any questions or ideas for things you'd like to hear about for new episodes, message us on any of these platforms or email us at informaticsintheround, that's the entire set of words, at gmail.com. See you later.
I throw my keys on the backseat of your car. I know you're in the driver's seat, but we're not getting very far. And I don't get it. Yeah, I can't stand it. You're playing me, who do you think you are? You're too afraid to get your head out of the game. You say you'll change, but you're still the same. I must be waiting for a miracle that I know will never come. 'Cause baby, you might still be here, but you're already gone. You're already gone. You must think I'm stupid not to know what's going on, but I'm not blind and I can see the damage that you've done. And it kills me that I could be so naive to hang around while your heart is on the run. You're too afraid to get your head out of the game. You say you'll change, but you're still the same. I must be waiting for a miracle that I know will never come. 'Cause baby, you might still be here, but you're already gone. Oh, you're already gone. If you can't find a way to say what's really on your mind, I'll say it for you. Goodbye. You're too afraid to get your head out of the game. You say you'll change.